Welcome to CrossmenLive the series. I'm Josh Sears.
And I'm Jack Brennicky, and if it's not painfully obvious by now, this is our cooking show. Don't worry, Josh and I won't be cooking anything, but we do have a bunch of folks who have, and in some cases still do, cook for the Crossmen. We have mouth-watering recipes, funny stories, and more. In addition to that, we have another exciting staff spotlight. This month, Aaron and Taylor sit down with Drew Shanefield. And there's a new segment we are calling A Moment with Mike. Mike Hardiak will give us an inside look at what's happening each month with the Crossmen. So let's get started. Have you ever wondered how to make an authentic Italian hoagie? Well, Millie Denisowicz is about to show us how. Millie was a volunteer in the 70s and 80s, and one of the things she did was to run the hoagie sales. Corps members would make hoagies, well actually they would take hoagie orders first from family, friends, and neighbors, and then get together at the post to make the hoagies. Millie ran the whole operation. So here she is with our first recipe.
Hi, I'm Millie Denisowicz. I'm going to show you how to make an authentic Italian hoagie.
You will need the following ingredients to make 6 8 to 10 inch hoagies. 6 Amoroso Italian long rolls, 1/2 pound each, salami, capicola, boiled ham, and provolone cheese, all thinly sliced. 1 8-ounce bag of shredded iceberg lettuce, 1 large sweet onion thinly sliced, 1 large ripe tomato thinly sliced, sweet or hot pickled Italian peppers, sliced dill pickles, oregano, salt and pepper, olive oil or salad oil. Open rolls carefully and drizzle the inside lightly with oil. On one side of the roll, place 3 slices of salami. On the other side of the roll, place 3 slices of capicola. Place 3 slices of provolone down the center of the roll. Then onion, next, add a layer of lettuce, then pickles, then the peppers, Now, sprinkle the veggies with oregano, salt, and pepper. Next, add a layer of tomatoes. And finally, top it all off with 2 slices of boiled ham. Cut the hoagie in half. And serve with a bag of Hers potato chips and a tasty cake of your choice. Or roll the hoagie up in a deli sheet and sandwich paper for the road.
And that's how you can make an authentic Italian hoagie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Goldberg,
And I'm Taylor Jenkins.
and we were both with the Crossmen as members of the Horn Line, and then we worked for the Corps after aging out. And each month we interview someone different from Crossmen's staff, either in the past or present. And we got Drew Shanefield with us tonight.
Hey, everybody. Honored to be here. Thanks for having me, Taylor. Thanks for having me on, Aaron.
Hey, we're glad you're here.
Yeah,
Hey, so first question for you, Drew. You obviously have a long, rich history in DCI. What are some of the overall highlights of your career?
Long and rich history. Yeah, man. Totally. I started marching in the cadets. I marched in the late 80s and early 90s, and I taught at the cadets for a handful of years. And then after that, I kind of jumped around a little bit. I kind of did some time at Carolina Crown, at the Bluecoats. I had 2 amazing years, which I'd like to circle back to with the Crossmen. And then probably the highlight of most of my professional work was 15 seasons at the Cavaliers. And I hopped on in the late 90s, and then kind of we stayed on. Over the course of 18 years, I was there for 15 seasons. So it's kind of weird, Aaron, Taylor, because like there was a time when I was working consulting for the Cavaliers and writing for the Crossmen and writing for the Cavaliers and consulting with the Bluecoats and kind of back and forth. It's kind of like I kind of took on a lot. Nevertheless, those are, I guess, a few of the highlights. The past couple years were spent at the cadets, kind of as most people do. We kind of come full circle at times, or in one way or another, and totally thrilled to be reconnecting with the Crossmen now.
Right on. You know, they say if you do this activity right, you work with everybody twice, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, and I'm always kind of like uncomfortable or a little awkward with like talking about highlights, because I always feel like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, like you talk about a season, like you put like one season on a pedestal, and then I start to feel really badly for the other seasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for somebody that was like their most amazing season. You kind of like have to take a highlight season and you sort of like have to put it in historical context.
Mm-hmm.
Like 92 couldn't have happened without that amazing 91. And then 90 Crossmen was killer. And then 89 Crossmen blasted back into finals. And 89 wouldn't have happened if like 88 was, you know what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
right?
Aaron and I are both big like context people. Like things don't happen in a vacuum.
The highlights for me are all about the friendships and the relationships.
Bingo.
You know, I mean, the colleagues, the students, the performances were like the auxiliary. You know, you get 1 or 2 of those amazing performances a season. Like those are like the highlight reel for me. You know what I mean? It's never.
Yeah.
I guess it's cliche, but it's never a score or a placement, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Drew, you mentioned already that you had 2 years working as a staffer with the Crossmen. What were the roles that you played then? And then do you have any specific memories of very proud moments from that time?
I do. My first year with the Crossmen was the first year I got the invitation to arrange for a world-class corps. Larry Markevich was an old friend, a dear friend, stepped into the corps at a time where they really needed some leadership, and he called upon a lot of colleagues. And so I was like so honored to write with Larry leading, but also Daryl Pemberton, who I marched with and taught with, and Lee Bettis and Eric Kitchen, and like it was like a really amazing group of people designing. And then I was like so many amazing guys on the brass staff, and like, I think of Bill Kellerman when I think of those years. You know what I mean? So the fact that I kind of stepped in at that point was so amazing. And I was actually at the time I was the brass caption head and the arranger, so it was like all hands on deck for every day of the year, all winter long. It was amazing. I still have my cross with which Becky gave me that year. I still keep it here, like kind of at my writing desk for sure. And then 2005 was really different, because I kind of mentioned transition, and I know sometimes corps don't like to talk about transition years, or it's kind of an awkward conversation piece, I guess, at times. But the corps was moving through some different management cycles, And so in 2005, which I consider to be an incredibly fun season, Bill Kellerman took on the brass caption head gig. So I was so happy to support him during that, and then to continue to write. Side note, my first Crossman experience started when in the late 1970s, when the Crossmen used to do a Memorial Day parade in Havertown, Pennsylvania. I kind of grew up near Westchester. Havertown and Westchester are pretty close to each other. So every memorial, this must have been the late 70s, early 80s. And I think of like the legends and the Hall of Famers from the Crossmen lore who were in those drum corps, from the color guard to the horns to the drum line in the late 70s, early 80s. So my first experience like seeing drum corps was actually the Crossmen at these Memorial Day parades. No one knew who they were. Like they just kind of zipped in at the end and they kind of got on these diesel fumed buses and kind of left us in the distance. But that was kind of my first experience, my first relationship with the Crossmen too. Kind of side note, I guess.
That's amazing. I had no idea, and I love that
Right.
that lineage.
And you know what, Aaron? I totally didn't piece it together. I totally didn't piece it together till years later. I'm like, wait, that was the Crossmen, and that, like those people, like how cool was that, right?
I love how in our universe, that's like saying, I saw Hank Aaron, when I was a kid.
All right, Drew, tell us, you've had time both as a brass arranger and as a program coordinator. What are some of the sort of behind the scenes hidden considerations that you have to take into account that an audience might not see or hear or even be privy to?
No two shows, and you do a lot of writing yourself, Aaron, so no two shows come together the same way. You know what I mean? You can think about, sometimes a show is driven by a concept, sometimes a show is championed by a visual idea or a piece of music. Like no two shows come together the same way, and it's always been my experience that when the show idea is like genuine and not forced, you're on the right path. There's no guarantee that a show is ever going to be a home run. I mean, we all think it's going to be a home run sitting at our computers like in February. We all hope so, right? But no two shows come together the same way, and as long as as long as you're genuine to yourself, you're not trying to follow a trend, you're not trying to do a derivative, your own copycat version of what someone else did. Do you know what I mean? Because then you start chasing your tail, you start following trends. That can be really tricky, and I think it's awfully important. There's like the front of the house stuff and the back of the house stuff that a lot of people don't like to think about. Like the back of the house people, like the alumni and the fundraising and food services and travel administration and core administration and transportation, like all of that stuff. And then there's like the front of the house stuff, the design and instruction and membership and like the show itself. I don't think people really understand how important all of it is. If one piece fails, then the whole thing suffers. I mean, I can think of a lot of drum corps seasons, and I won't mention any specifically, where like everything on the field felt great, except we could never get out of the parking lot. Do you know what I mean? Or we had amazing vehicles and we ate like champs, except the show was kind of like mezzo. Do you know what I mean? Like so much has to go right that the members don't even see, and thank goodness they don't see it. Like, you know what I mean? The idea is we just want to let the members just focus on performance, education, performance, make sure they're safe, make sure they're happy, make sure they're healthy. But so much of like that front of the house, back of the house stuff goes on that, especially when you're a program coordinator or when you're like a liaison with admin, it'll blow your mind how much work there is behind the scenes.
Hey, so Drew, thanks for carving out the time to be with us. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole alumni crew when I say that, the Corps is fortunate to have you and to have you back. Is there anything that you want to leave us with?
Thanks, Aaron. I'm totally committed. Like, it's kind of that old school Crossmen East Coast Drum Corps vibe. Like this is like work and work and work, and when you're not sure what else to do, get it up and get back to work and do it some more. And that's kind of the approach with what we're doing with show design. Like we're gonna make a real commitment to making you all real proud of the drum corps that's out there this year.
Hi, my name is Carol Shearer, and my husband Tim and I volunteered with the Corps from 2003 when our son Grant auditioned through his age out and the first year in Texas in 2007. And then we continued to volunteer after that, meeting the Corps wherever they were. They were close to us. Tim usually was driving and I was on the food truck. I worked spring training, I worked winter camps, I worked the tour, and I worked finals week, and it was great. One of the things that I always wanted to make sure was that the members and staff who were vegetarian or vegan had enough to eat, enough protein. So one of the things I would make or bring with me when I came on tour was hummus. And there are lots of variations, but what I'm going to make today is just the basic hummus. So you start out with some olive oil, some lemon juice, some chopped garlic, some tahini, which is ground sesame seeds, and you make sure that is blended really well. You add a little bit of water and some cumin and some salt. And then you mix that up just a little bit more before you put the main ingredient in, which is chickpeas or garbanzo beans. It's a little messy, but I'd always try to make a pretty big batch at one time. So we'll keep in the refrigerator for a while. Here we go, more noise. So one of the things that we did when we were on the food truck was to make some volunteer shirts because there were none at that time. And we kind of carried off the theme. Instead of got milk, we did got food. And each year had a different theme, a different saying on it. But it was just a way to kind of build camaraderie with the volunteers, and then the students would know which ones were the food volunteers when they had a question or a special request or a special need. So there we go. And that is your basic hummus. Can be served with pita bread, wedges, or any kind of crackers, any kind of hard vegetable. It can be used as a spread instead of peanut butter. So I would just put it in a big bowl on top of some ice for them and put it out with a lot of veggies. I have veggies here today. And make sure that they had something filling to eat for their meal.
Welcome to Crossmen Live. Today's show is the cooking show. And with us, as you can see, are some of our illustrious cooks throughout the years. And what we're going to be talking about is just what it was like to cook for 200 people 4 times a day on tour in spring training, some of the great meals that they cooked and some of the great experiences that they have. So why don't we get started right away? And Denise, why don't you kick off the first session? What was the favorite meal that you cooked for the kids?
Oh, there's so many. Pick and chatties, otherwise known as chicken patties. Any pasta, anything spaghetti, pasta, ziti, and of course the obvious buffalo chicken. Hands down, always buffalo chicken, but we reserve that for special times.
Favorite meal, the kids always liked it when they had a really full rounded meal when, at different times. And so when we had the time and the availability to make, like a huge meal, something from scratch, we'd cook big roasts or something like, when we were closer to hometown. I think they really like that. I know they love the casseroles. I think my favorite thing to cook for them, because they always seemed to like it and it wasn't really cooking, but was Caesar salad with chicken, baked chicken on top. That was always a big hit. Yeah, the other thing I think was I liked to make cakes when I was there, and we just called them Crossman cake, and we got into bringing stencils and decorating them with symbols and all kinds of things, and they got bigger, and so that was always a lot of fun too.
I'm Jackie Jurgens. I volunteered for 14, got sucked into being assistant food manager for 14, then did food manager the rest of 14, 15, and then up until spring training of 16 is when I fed the Corps.
Wow.
Went on tour 14 and 15, which was cool. I got to do the whole West Coast tour, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And what was the favorite meal for the kids and the favorite meal for you to cook?
Favorite meal for the kids. That's a good one. We did breakfast tacos.
Ooh.
So they actually got to like bake their own taco when we were on tour, because we're like, okay, what are we going to do? And so we're like, threw together breakfast tacos, and it was pretty much a serve yourself, because I think we did that on 15, and there were only 3 of us on the food truck the whole tour. And so we were exhausted. And so anything that we could just let the kids do themselves, it was a bonus. My favorite thing to cook was anything I didn't have to cook. So, so like when we'd roll into Allentown, it's like, hey, they're bringing in the pizzas and the sandwiches. And I mean, it was just nice to have a break.
I started volunteering on the food truck in 2003 with my oldest daughter. She marched 03, 04. And then my next 2 daughters started in 05. And when she was there, they were at Jersey Surf. So I was volunteering for 2 corps at the same time in 03 and 04. So I think I did about a week-long tour in 03 and 04, maybe a couple of winter camps, that kind of thing. Then in 05, Cherry Terry was the food manager during that time. And in 05, she had to go home a lot. And every time she would go home, John Bergen would say, Donna's in charge. And I'd be like, what? I am, So I went about a month in 05. And then in 2006, Cherry wasn't coming back, and they asked me to do it. And I took on food manager in 06, was food manager 6, 7, and 8. I did spring training all the way through the summer, all 3 of those years. And I still had a daughter marching in 9 and 10. So I went back for like a week during those years, volunteered for a week, and then a little bit here and there. So like that's the extent of my either volunteering or food manager combined. So
A lot of time on that truck.
a lot of time on that truck, yeah, for
So what was
sure.
your favorite food for the kids to eat that you prepared, and what was your favorite meal to prepare?
Well, so since it was such a stretch, and the funny thing that I think is interesting is that we went from being from like, the Northeast, where Cherry's background would be like meat and potatoes, Pennsylvania Dutch, and then we get to Texas, and that's what I know how to cook, is that stuff, because she taught me tons of stuff. Like when I took over her role, she drove, 3 hours to my house, sat with me for 3 or 4 hours. I took notes, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted her in the Hall of Fame so badly, because I would have never been able to do what I did if I didn't learn from her. But then when I get to Texas, a lot of these kids their cuisine is different. What they are used to eating is different, and I've got to make that adjustment. So I started asking around for like ideas. The buffalo chicken actually happened in '06 before we moved to Texas. But when we got to Texas, and we had always done taco salad, that kind of thing, which is a big hit no matter where you're at. But I had called home to him once and I said, you need to find me something to make for these kids that is more Texas cuisine, something like more Tex-Mex and I don't even know the difference between Mexican and Tex-Mex and all of that, but I know that it's not, like just hamburgers and fries, So he came up with a recipe, green chili chicken casserole. And I'm telling you, the kids went crazy. And I was told by some of the local parents that down there, they call it King Ranch.
Huh.
Something like that. So, or it was similar to what they would call King Ranch. But it had layers of tortillas, cheese, chicken, cream of chicken soup, sour cream. And I remember the kids coming to me after the first time and they were like, you can make this every day. So that was probably one of the ones, other than the buffalo chicken casserole, that they got most excited about that I can remember.
So was Rick your sous chef?
Rarely. I mean, he'd come on and help anytime he was around, but it was not cooking so much as like I'd have him do like, can you load those cans kind of work, because I mean it's backbreaking.
I would do whatever. I cracked eggs.
He did cook, but
I did pasta.
Yeah.
So Rick was your muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Danita and I never went on tour as volunteers, but we did do a lot of spring training when our daughter Chelsea was working down there. And so we would go down there, and because I don't mind getting up in the morning, I did a lot of breakfasts. And one of the favorite things, I like to work the griddle. So I liked doing eggs on the griddle. I remember doing, hundreds of them at a time, it seemed. And French toast sometimes, even when the ovens would not turn on for some reason, we would end up putting them on the griddle, and that was fun. One of the most fun experiences that we got to do is when we did what you liked most, when we were able to bring a meal to the Corps so that you guys didn't have to cook. One year when the Corps was coming through Kansas, it was in the maybe mid O's, somewhere around '06 or something. I think Dean Musson may have been the director then. And we provided steaks for the Corps. It was Kansas, so we got steaks donated. We got people with grills showing up, and we provided a steak dinner. And the cooks,
I think Dean was 5. Scott Litzenberg was 6.
Okay, so and I think the kitchen crew seemed to enjoy it as much as the kids did when we were able to do that. So tell us your experience with special needs. How did you guys adjust to that? Donna, why don't you go first?
Well, I mean, I honestly never had a vegan. I had a couple of pretty severe nut allergies, and always there's a handful of vegetarians from my experience, my years. As far as the vegetarians go, I would try to just kind of create the same meal that the rest of the Corps was having and leave the meat out, and then maybe add some tofu, like some extra protein somewhere, so that they still got that. They got the protein, but I tried to make it as similar as everyone else's plate.
Well, I'm not a vegetarian, I'm not a vegan, and I'm very fortunate that with few exceptions, I have very few food allergies or idiosyncrasies. So, but those kids always, sometimes you feel like they felt like they were imposing upon you, that they had to eat something different. And the food truck managers never made them feel like, oh, we have to fix a special meal. But some volunteers would. I think they just didn't understand. And so I just thought, let's make everybody feel like, we're all one. We'll make sure that you have something to eat that's not going to kill you. So, a lot of times I would make something up in large quantity, like hummus, try to make sure there was some sort of protein. And even after Grant aged out, I remember going to volunteer every so often. And when I would try to take something. Like ahead of time, I would make a whole batch of falafel balls or something. And, just make sure that they all had something too. And I don't know why I took it on as a special cause, but I just remember having the feeling sometimes that those kids almost didn't want to ask or make their needs known. And I thought, well, nobody needs to feel like that. So, it's really not that difficult to find something to fix for them that you can fix in quantity and some variety. And we used to try to make sure, sometimes we had the luxury of a little bit of extra money and we could actually buy them vegetarian things, like sausage patties and things like that. But, we, just tried to be a little bit creative.
I got very lucky with the 2 years that I was with them. We didn't have a lot of food allergies. I think there was only like one girl that had like a nut allergy. And so she just we had a separate jar of jelly for her and bread, and she just kept it in the back of the food truck. But other than that, she was, pretty self-sufficient. Did have one that was kosher though. So that was interesting, trying to figure that one out.
Yeah.
And he'd come up, he's like, okay, where's mine? And he would have his own little bowl. Because it's like, I wouldn't put it out with anything else. And he just, would come up and just kind of look like, okay, where's my dinner? And pass it on down. I mean, I got super lucky. And then I had a couple vegans and, a handful of vegetarians. And I mean, like Donna said, it's like, you just make what you make for everybody and you just substitute in and out what you can to make it, for everybody, for our special people.
Mine's a little different because I do mostly winter camps. So there's sometimes we had one camp in particular, Jackie was there, we had up to 500 kids. So my typical cooking is between 90 to 500. And the more kids you have, the more variations you have. We always keep soy and almond milk on hand. Jackie, every camp I work, I still make Jackie's side dish of corn and bean salsa because it is vegan, vegetarian, lactose, gluten-free. And matter of fact, I make it at home. Jackie invented it and it runs, and you can serve it with pretty much anything. We've had some severe food things for a couple of years. We had one kid who actually still has his own shelf in the food truck. He's no longer with the Corps, but the shelf still has his name on it. And he was severe celiac. And we had special meals we had to prepare for him. He had to have salt infused foods. He couldn't have, he was also gluten-free. Gluten-free is a fun one. A lot of quinoa, a lot of sauteed vegetables, a lot of greens, a lot of beans, tofu burgers, vegetarian, like she said, vegetarian burgers, vegetarian sausage patties. But if you can make a pasta dish and leave out the meat, but we presently have a staff member, he's been there for several years. He's the assistant brass caption head. He's allergic to tomatoes. So no tomato sauce, no salsa. Yeah, that one's tough. And he was there a year before he even told me. So the biggest thing we like to do is gather the kids at like the first meal and say, tell us what you want. What do you like? What do you want? And, we'll pass it on to the food managers come spring training, and then you can structure their special meals around their likes and needs and desires.
One of the later food managers was actually vegan, Kathleen.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped. She was cooking for herself as well as, some of the special needs. So she understood it from a personal perspective, as you all do as well. So we'll go around the room again and tell us your stories. Carol, why don't you start this time?
Go ahead, Tinkerbell.
Oh, yeah. Well, there is the infamous story, which I related in one of the other episodes about being the only one who was willing to climb all the way up to the top of the food truck and get boxes down. And when I went to jump, I had a hoodie on and I got hung up on a bungee. And so they came up with the name Tinkerbell for me. And it was really funny at the time. And no one could help me because they were laughing so hard. But eventually I got myself unhooked. And the other story I think that really sticks out with me is at one year, Donna was on then, we were doing the 4th of July parades and used to be in New England, and they did 3, 4, 5 parades. And our corps was the last of 5 to know that there was going to be a food roundup, a food truck roundup, that all the corps could visit, and each corps would fix their favorite meal. And we found out through no fault of our own at the very last minute. And because of the finding out that way, we all just said, well, this is a competition and we're going to win. And so instead of fixing just our favorite or, traditional food, we had people zooming all over town in golf carts, on foot, you name it, getting enough food. And we did an entire 4th of July traditional cookout with hamburgers, hot dogs, potato salad, you name it, it was there. And we found enough stuff at the, little grocery store to decorate the tables, and we put weeds in a big bucket and put them on the table for decoration. We had flags everywhere. And I will never forget the kids coming from all 5 corps coming to our truck and just saying, wow, you guys really know how to put on a meal. And Crossmen win.
Yeah.
And so it was very satisfying.
And then the following years, they would come to the truck being, when's the 4th of July picnic? When are you going to have the burgers? They come back looking for it again,
Yeah. And as you can imagine, everybody was exhausted because you went from spot to spot and you had to keep setting up and tearing down, and it was so hot out. And, by the time we got to that particular parade, you could have beaten us with a wet noodle, but we were so determined. And everybody pitched in, the drivers, every volunteer, the volunteer spouses, staff, and it was just a great time. And the kids really, really loved it. And our kids were so proud of what we had been able to do for them.
Some of the fun ones, the biggest thing with being on the food truck, though, is the kids do not need to know, or never even need to feel that things went wrong. Running out of gas, burning food, dropping food, refrigerators don't work. 2 camps that I've been involved with, the food truck didn't show up. Scrambling, running to the store, finding stuff, not being able to hook up to the water, trucks getting stuck in the mud behind the school and can't hook up to water or electricity, and cooking in the rain and snow. They just need to be fed. When things aren't happening, sometimes you have to internalize it and not let everyone know you're panicking. We thought the food was cooked and the ovens ran out of gas. Oh my God. Text someone and say, tell the staff to hold on 20 minutes. We got to finish cooking the food, and just kind of calm down. Things happen, We've seen entire cases of eggs drop, pans dropped coming out of the door, people sliding down those stairs. I've had a table buckle under in the food line with kids standing there. Yeah, you just kind of got to grin and bear it and roll with the punches and just go on.
I've remembered cooking meals and thinking, oh, good, I have 30 minutes, and 20 minutes into it, it's still ice cold because there's no propane. It was hot when you put it in, and then all of a sudden it's like, this isn't right. And you've got 10, 15 minutes to feed the kids. So it's like, swap the tanks over, crank the heat on the ovens, and serve the kids on time.
Oh, so many stories from all the years. But a few that stick out to me. I remember, I don't know where we were, but we had this driver of the food truck, and one night he came into the parking lot and didn't make the right turn, and then decided to drive over this median, like curb, up the curb and then down the curb on the other side instead of going around. And when we opened the food truck, there was not a thing on the shelf. I have pictures of this. It's crazy. Everything was on the floor and half of it was destroyed. Like we threw away so much food because it broke open or it got contaminated by something else. And he was there at that time. He was in there for hours cleaning up. Mm-hmm. It was crazy.
That was Gettysburg. For the Corps, that was the first trip out of spring training, I believe, and it was like, this really sucks.
That kind of thing like happened all the time. I mean, like Denise says, all the times the ovens didn't work, the times you ran out of propane, the times that like just constant. And the cleaning of the truck was just something you always had to fit in there because, the floors would get gross. You'd have to pull those mats out, get that cleaned up. You'd have to have them hosed down. Like there was just so much in addition to cooking that went on behind the scenes. But it's so true that you just did your best to never let the kids know that was what you were dealing with. They got there, it was time to smile on the face and, so that they could not worry about any of that kind of thing. They had their own job to worry about and you wanted them to give 100% there and not to anything else. So there are always those kind of things. Another story that I remember, not particularly about food, but about the truck. I'm not sure who the driver of the food truck was this night, but I was riding with Scotty in the equipment truck and we're going down the highway and I see this white flash and I look out and I'm like, that's a pack of styrofoam cups. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's plates. And like, I see this stuff just flying past the window and I'm telling him like the bay opened up or something. And then Scotty, he sees like I don't know, it's like a metal door in literally the middle of the highway. So the door didn't just open, it came off. And everything in that bay was flying past us. Like, I felt like it was the Wizard of Oz, And I was astounded by the fact that Scott just picked up the radio, called the volley van and said, what's your location? And they were about 4 miles back. And he said, the door to the blah, blah, blah. It's at mile marker this. It's in the middle of the road. Can you guys get it? And sure enough, they pulled over. They got it. They put it in. And we had it the next day to repair. It blew my mind that it worked that. I mean, we lost everything in that bay, but we didn't lose the door. I remember back in the original CrossmenLive, the series, so many people talking about how rewarding this job is. And it is the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, I've raised 4 kids, but that is the hardest thing I've ever done. And also one of the most rewarding things in my life, for sure. So.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time that, the jobs that you do, the people that get those 4 meals out every day, that is, one of the hardest jobs, if not the hardest job in Drum Corps. The kids, we want the kids to focus strictly on what their job is. We want the staff to be able to do that. The admin are juggling 100 things in the air all the time. But when it comes down to it, everybody wants those 4 meals. Everybody expects them to be there, and you guys always deliver. It is just amazing what you do. Do you remember, going back a little bit, and now Denise, I know you marched back in the day, but Rick, Don, and I marched in the beginning of the Crossmen, and we were there when the first food truck showed up, and it wasn't really a truck; it was a trailer that the Robinsons kind of hooked up to one of the vehicles and drug around. Do you guys remember that, Donna and Rick?
Oh yeah, for sure. My mom worked out of that.
She pulled it, right?
She pulled it with her van.
And they would cook full meals out of the back of a little. It was tiny too, that trailer that they had, and had a griddle. I know Robbie liked to make very loose eggs.
Yeah. Well, it had no electricity. It had, all your thing, everything was cooled by ice. So somebody was always going for ice back then. But yeah, none of the modern conveniences that they have today.
No, I see some of even the newer trucks, and I know that we're on a campaign to get a new food truck, and hopefully we can kind of work on that even on this next CrossmenLive to get that going again.
The best is the kids. When the kids come through the line and they see the food and they like it and they cheer and they start, yay! That's the best.
I just had remembered, and I wanted to bring it up when I think it might have been 05 or 06. The Crossmen stayed at my local high school, and it gave me the opportunity to go home for a couple of days. And during that time, Michelle, who doesn't live too far from me, about 40 minutes, she had a friend who was in the catering business. And I think the alumni helped pay for this, but they literally like set up the cafeteria at my local high school like a wedding, like cloth, tablecloths, real china, the whole 9 yards, and fed them this like amazing meal, which I missed because I went home. But I think the kids talked about it for the longest time. And it's, again, like those kind of things that that just make every season special. There's something like that in every season. I mean, we've had many times where like a family would just outright bring the meal that day, even if it was like, chicken sandwiches. And that kind of stuff is always great. But that one was really special because literally they had china.
Just it is one of the hardest jobs that I have ever done in my life. But it's something that, was so rewarding and so fulfilling that, and you do it for the kids. It's not about me. It's not about anybody else, but you do it for the kids.
I remember telling people before who've never been involved with something like this, it's just really impossible to explain. It's just like drum corps. Unless you've been there and done this, you can't explain it to anybody. And I've never worked physically as hard, sweated as much than any other thing I've ever done. But it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And I slept really well when we did get to sleep.
All I can say is thank you. We certainly appreciate all the time and effort and hard work and the joy that you've brought to the kids by feeding them every day. So have a good time and go Bones.
Hi, I'm Michelle Williams, and today I'm going to show you how to make a breakfast dish called Tater Tot Breakfast Casserole. I created this dish while on tour in 2011 with the Corps as a volunteer.
You will need the following ingredients: 2 pounds of your favorite breakfast sausage, 1 large onion and 2 green bell peppers finely chopped, 1/2 stick of butter, 9 eggs, 1½ cups of milk, 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard, 1 loaf of potato bread, 3 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, and 1 large bag of frozen tater tots. In a large skillet, break up and brown the sausage. In a separate skillet, saute the onions and peppers in butter until they are tender. Place a single layer of bread slices in the bottom of 1 large or 2 small greased casseroles or baking pans. Tear remaining bread into pieces and scatter on top of the bottom layer. Add the browned sausage. Distribute evenly, breaking up the larger pieces. Now add the layer of sauteed onions and peppers. And then the layer of shredded cheese. In a large bowl, beat together the eggs, milk, and the mustard, and pour evenly over the other ingredients. Finally, top it all off with a layer of tater tots. Block formation or scatter trill, it's up to you. Cover the casseroles with the aluminum foil and bake at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. Remove the foil and bake uncovered for an additional 15 minutes. Allow to cool for 10 to 15 minutes before serving.
And that's how you can make tater tot breakfast casserole.
Hello, Crossmen, past, present, and maybe even some future members. My name is Mike Hardick, and I have the honor of calling myself the Interim Corps Director for your Crossmen Drum Bugle Corps. I just want to take a couple minutes to catch you up on what we believe the season's going to look like. In February, March, and April, all of our camps will be held virtually. They will contain both movement and playing elements. In May, we'll meet 2 times. The first May camp is going to serve to select the color guard members and give everybody else a chance to actually meet in person for the first time. And then we will have the traditional Memorial Day camp, because it's not Memorial Day without Drum Corps. We will be moving in for spring training on June 25th. Our spring training this year will consist of 3 weeks of spring training. Then we will start the Texas tour. Our Texas tour is going to be done in a spoke and hub fashion. And what that means is we will gather in one place, and then we will leave to go do a contest, and then come back. Then leave again and come back. So it'll still be out of a central location. The Texas tour takes about 2.5 weeks. We're going to leave for our final destination on August 2nd. As you know by now, Drum Corps International is hosting a three-day event, August 12th through the 14th in Indianapolis. It's going to be a complete showcase show featuring all the drum corps that you're used to seeing. We're doing everything we can to create and provide something that looks like a traditional drum corps summer for our membership. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. You can reach me at mike.hardick@crossmen.org. I want to thank the alumni for starting a legacy that we can continue to grow in your honor. Have a great day.
Hello, Crossmen. This is Donna Reedy, Donna Kroll Reedy. I marched in the Horn Line from 1975 through 1978, and then in the Color Guard for 1980 and 81. Since then, I've had a couple of my daughters march in the Corps, which got me involved in the food truck. So I spent 8 years either volunteering or a couple of years as food manager, and during that time, one of the things that I came up with was a meal that I believe is still used to this day, which is buffalo chicken casserole. So I'm going to put it together for you, and we're going to enjoy it for dinner. So here we go. First, it's ziti noodles that you can use penne, rigatoni, I happen to have ziti, that's what we'll be using today. Then a pound of diced or shredded chicken, put that in. Then we have 2 cups shredded cheddar cheese. I'm gonna reserve a little bit for the topping. Then this is cream cheese with a little milk melted so that it makes it creamy. Just 8 ounces of cream cheese. Now, obviously I'm making this for a 9 by 13, but the Crossmen make enough for 150 people. So the recipe is slightly different. And then a cup and a half of ranch dressing. I'm gonna mix all this together. Just gonna kind of wing the salt and pepper across the top. Heavy on the salt or light on the salt, whatever you like better. And most importantly, 1/4 cup of hot sauce. All right, now we mix. Get it all good and mixed together. This is my first cooking show, but not my first time cooking. Come on over here, camera, and see the product if you want. Once it's all mixed, we're gonna dump it into the casserole. Now, a little story about how I came up with this buffalo chicken casserole. 2006 was my first year as the full-time food manager. We were in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I was trying to come up with something else to make, something new. One of the other moms suggested make them buffalo chicken dip for a snack. And I was looking for a meal. And that mom was Terry Fields. So I took her idea, thanks Terry, and made it into more of a meal. So there we are, buffalo chicken casserole. Mine is going into the oven at 350 for 30 minutes.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am hungry. Thanks to all those who contributed to this month's show. And don't forget to support the Crossmen by texting X-Men 2021 to 41444. Again, that's X-Men 2021 to 41444. So Josh, what do we have coming up next month?
So next month, we're going to be taking a look at lives of Crossmen past their marching careers. A lot of Crossmen alumni have gone into the military for music. So we're going to be focusing on military musicians. So join us next month for a whole lot of great musical information. And I'm going to go cook some buffalo chicken casserole, so we'll see you next month. I'm Josh Sears.
And I'm Jack Renicky.